2021, my boyfriend Eric was murdered in front of me. 2 hours later, 20 members of his family kicked in the doors to our new home, dragged me out of bed by my hair, and physically assaulted me. These two incidents completely altered the trajectory of my life as I knew it.
Welcome back to another episode of Clocked Out Conversations. I'm your host, Fahim, and today we're going to get into some more TikTok content. This is my first time seeing this lady. What's your story? Yeah, I watched a little bit of it. Seemed like she had a lot of trauma, so I figured it would make for a good story time. Like, comment, and subscribe. Without further ado, let's get into it.
So of all the comments left on my videos, I think this one is probably the most important. I do have a video pinned at the top of my page where I'm wearing a red shirt that kind of explains this, but for those of you that are new here, we'll go through it again. 3 years ago on October 9th, 2021, my boyfriend Eric was murdered in front of me. 2 hours later, 20 members of his family kicked in the doors to our new home, dragged me out of bed by my hair, and physically assaulted me. These two incidents completely altered the trajectory of my life as I knew it. It makes me really sad to talk about it because literally ever since then, my life has been shit and I have not been able to accomplish or do anything that I've wanted to do. So because of that immense compound trauma, I wasn't able to leave the house. Well, let me back up really quickly. This happened in Wisconsin. So it happened the day that I got there with all my stuff in a U-Haul because my boyfriend and I had just moved in with each other. And I had gotten there that night in a U-Haul and he was murdered. That same night, we went out to celebrate. 5 days later, I drove that same U-Haul back to Florida, put my stuff back into storage, and moved into my sister's on her sofa for 2 years. I lost 14 pounds in the first 5 days. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't leave the house. I was so afraid for my life. I started getting death threats almost instantly after that happened. I was one of 2 witnesses, but the other witness that was there had his back turned at the time, so I was the only witness. I had to sleep with the lights on for 2 years, and I used to jam a chair up under the door handle, and there was a sign outside for like package deliveries and stuff because I couldn't go to the grocery store. I physically couldn't leave the house. I was in so much fear to not ring the doorbell and knock on the door because it was very triggering for me. My mom started a GoFundMe for me where we raised $5,000, and luckily my bills were like so small that I was able to live off of that for about a year and a half. I started therapy 2 weeks after my boyfriend's murder, and I've been in therapy ever since. I see a psychiatrist for my medication management and once a month, and my therapist once a week. Because I wasn't able to go outside or do anything, I started looking into jobs online and doing things on social media. I started sharing my journey, my trauma, and healing journey on social media. That page was called Eric and Zoe. It was banned back in 2022, right before I went to rehab. I found it very therapeutic.
I'm not the most familiar with TikTok. It probably sounds weird because I do a lot of TikTok reactions. But why in the world do people get their things banned like this? Sound like she was trying to vent her trauma via social media and they just didn't want that, I guess. Leave in the comments. I'm wondering.
Sharing my journey, and it helped other people, which I really liked as well. I had videos go viral on there, but I wasn't part of the Creator Rewards program, so it didn't net me any money. by January of 2022, which was about 4 months after witnessing my boyfriend's murder, I discovered UGC, which is user-generated content, and I signed up for some websites and started looking into how I could do that to generate income. Because I didn't have a portfolio, I had to start from scratch, so brands would mail me products, and I would create content for them in exchange for the product, which was called a gifted collab. As my portfolio grew, I started getting paid a little bit more money. The next job that I got was for $5, and then $15, and then $20. I wasn't making enough money to live off of, but luckily I had the GoFundMe that covered my bills, and I was getting food stamps from the state, so I would order my groceries online on Instacart, and that's how I managed to survive. Because I had nothing but time on my hands, I started getting really, really good at content creation. I had ordered a tripod off of Amazon for $30, and I started playing around with lighting. I went to Home Depot and got some cardboard that I broke in half and put down wallpaper on so that I could make staged scenes to put a product into, because I was just living on the sofa. I didn't have my own bedroom, and the bathroom was my niece's bathroom, so it was very girly and sometimes didn't match the correct aesthetic for a product. My best friend wanted me to start helping her create content for her page, and she was paying me, I think it was $200 a month. October of 2022, I went to an inpatient trauma treatment center in Ocala, Florida. I stayed there for 2 months. I had one roommate, and we lived in a cabin together. I brought my service dog Tokyo with me. There's videos on my page if you scroll down. I only had my phone 2 days a week for 30 minutes each day, so I tried to update and share what I was learning in trauma treatment center. We had 40 hours a week of therapy that was very, very intense, and that's where I also did ART, which is a really intense therapy, but because the case with Eric's family breaking into my house is ongoing, it's not something that I was able to continue doing. I checked out of rehab in December 7th, 2022, and I thought that life was going to be really easy, but what I didn't take into account was that I was living on a compound, hold on a sec, where we were all locked in. I knew everybody there. Coming back out into the big world was just very scary for me, very triggering. I had a really bad panic attack trying to go to the grocery store. That video I think is on my page.
It's crazy to see how intense trauma can be for somebody. And it's also equally as incredible to see how she's been able to triumph from it. It's just interesting to hear her entire story and see how she's been able to deal with it and go through it.
If not, I think it's on my Instagram. I've documented my journey over the last 3 years pretty heavily. I had people from Dr. Phil reach out, asking me to be on the show, and I had a woman reach out asking me if she could use my video in her classes to show people what it looks like when somebody is being triggered that has PTSD or anxiety. I also had many of you guys reach out to me asking for guidance and help, and I was glad that I was in the position or had the experience to help you guys. I didn't ask for this life. My life before was really, really great. I was a dancer. I was making $10,000, $15,000 a month, sometimes 30 in 1 month. I was traveling. I had friends. I didn't have one mental health problem. I wasn't seeing any doctors for any reason. Life was really, really good. Last summer, I started working with someone at vocational rehab to help me get a job. They help people with disabilities get jobs, and I also applied for disability and was denied. I applied a second time with an attorney and was denied, and they've asked me to resubmit a third time to appeal the decision. I have gotten a few content creation jobs that did pay pretty well. I got one for $350. I think the most I've gotten was $600. Most of the time people get paid thousands of dollars to do content creation. I'm just still trying to figure out how to secure that. I worked with vocational rehab for several months. We applied to hundreds of jobs and I didn't get a call back or hired for any of them. I did get a call back for Target, and I went through to the second interview process, and they didn't hire me. The lady at vocational rehab also helped tailor my resume to make it more appealing to recruiters, but I still wasn't able to get a regular job. The time on this video is running out, so go to part 2. I know this was long, but it's my story. It's important. It really explains how I got to where I am today. This is part 2 of my story of basically how I ended up homeless. If you haven't watched part 1, go to part 1 because it has the majority of the details of how I got here. So summer of 2023, I stopped working with the lady at vocational rehab. It was clear that I wasn't going to get a job through her, so I just focused on my content creation, and I moved in with my niece and my sister, and with the money that I was making through content creation, I was able to afford my part of the rent. The very last day of February 2024, I started dating my boyfriend, and I was introduced to working on music video sets by him. The pay was only about $150 per music video, and I think I did like 4 total. Him and I decided to move in together, so we signed a lease on my birthday, May 22nd, 2024. I was still just doing content creation primarily at that time, and he was doing Uber Eats, and he kind of introduced me to that. I couldn't get signed up for Uber Eats, so I got signed up for DoorDash. I believe it was June 3rd of 2024. We moved in together the second week, I believe, of June. We got the keys on the 1st, but we had to house sit for his mom, so we missed the first week. So we moved in after that first week of June, and everything was going okay until it wasn't. He turned out to be very abusive, and things, I felt like, escalated after our relationship, after we moved in together.
I was going to say, she might have wanted to be careful that, she might have wanted to be careful that she didn't get into a relationship off of the strength of her feeling alone, traumatized, and feeling like she needed to confide in somebody, because that can cause you to rush into a relationship that isn't healthy and leave you open and susceptible to being taken advantage of, like it seems like she has been.
He was narcissistic, would manipulate me, would gaslight me, and was verbally, physically, and emotionally abusive towards me. So a month later, July 6th, I ended our relationship, moved all of my stuff out back into storage, and camped out on my sister's couch again. Originally, he was going to keep the apartment, but then decided that he didn't want it, so I ended the lease on June 19th, 2024. During this time, I started door dashing 14 hours a day just to avoid my feelings and because I didn't have anything else to do. I actually started doing it to a very unhealthy point. I lost 10 pounds and then another 4 pounds and got down to 110 pounds. I started applying for apartments and doing the apartment mystery shop, looking around for apartments and just trying to continue my content creation whenever I possibly could. I got approved for the apartment, and when the lady let me know which one it was, she told me that it was on the bottom floor, and I specifically told her before I applied that I didn't want to be on the bottom floor, and she told me that the top floor was coming available, that she would let me know, and that went on for weeks. So in the meantime, I applied for another apartment, and the very next day, somebody else was approved for it before I could get my application in. My sister's boyfriend was coming into town, and she has honestly been so helpful to me over the last 2 years. She really just wanted her space back, which is very fair. So my friend Stacy let me come stay at her house for a few nights. Despite sending several emails to the woman about the apartment that I was approved for, the apartment that she thought was coming available evidently didn't come available, because now it's November and I still haven't heard from her. So I was trying to figure out what to do. I was getting really burnt out, and it was making me really sick to work 14 hours a day, and I was running out of places to live. So my mom invited me to come stay with her in Maine. 2 days later, I booked my flight and I was in Maine. My mom lives in a very, very small, tiny home, which is a 1-bedroom with a loft. I don't know what the square footage is, but it's very, very tiny. I made a tiny home video. If you guys scroll down, you can find it. Over these 5 weeks, I didn't work at all, but I had saved my DoorDash money to cover my bills and the few expenses that I had. So I threw myself into my content creation and started heavily promoting TikTok Shop to try to see if I could get anywhere with that and see if I could get something to take off. Unfortunately, I've only sold 2 products and I've made about $6. They were opening a TJ Maxx in that town, so I applied for a job there, and I started applying for jobs in the area and remotely, and again did not get anywhere. And when I say apply for jobs, I don't mean that I just got online and applied to 1 or 2 jobs. I mean that I would sit down for 6 to 8 hours on Indeed applying for hundreds of jobs. I did this for weeks. I did it for months and didn't get anywhere. Because the town that my mom lives in is so rural, they don't have DoorDash there. The closest town was 2.5, I think, hours away, and I just didn't want to do that. It didn't seem worth it to me to drive all that way to go DoorDash and then drive 2.5 hours back home to sleep.
Yeah, as somebody who has done DoorDash and Uber Eats in the past, it's not worth it if you're in that situation, because not only are you not really making all that much money, but especially considering if your car breaks down, that's something you have to pay for, and the gas money. She's 2.5 hours away from where she lives. All of the money that she made that day is going right to gas, not to mention if her car breaks down on the drive to or fro. So yeah, it wasn't worth it.
After about 3 weeks of sitting around and not doing anything, not working, not doing anything, I started to get antsy and started looking at my next options. I considered going back to Tampa to start, because I know at least that I can make money there. I would still, though, probably have to live in my car or get a hotel, but by the time I pay for the hotel, pay for the rental, it just doesn't leave me enough money left over. And it's very hot there, so living in your car in Florida, even this time of year, is like not really an option. I used to live in California years ago, and I have always wanted to come back out to LA. So I made a plan to start in San Diego because I have a childhood friend that has known me my entire life. Like, she knew me before I was born, or she knew my parents before I was born, knew me while I was born, used to babysit me and stuff. I didn't really remember her, but I've been in contact with her on Facebook and Instagram for several years. So I decided to fly out to San Diego to see if I'd be interested in living there. And I spent the first 2 days kind of just like, she showed me around. The first day I flew in, the second day she showed me around, the third day I started door dashing, and it was terrible. The places in San Diego are very spread out, so you're taking like one order for $6, like 30 minutes this way, and then you've got to come 20 minutes this way to get back into the thing, and then you've got to drive 16 minutes this way. Like, it was a lot of wasting time just to like get to the order, and I just didn't make any money. I was supposed to stay there the whole week and then come to LA, and after 3 days I left and came to LA. Before I came here, I reached out to my photographer that did some really incredible shots of me before I came, who's my friend, who offered me to stay in his house for 3 to 4 days. So I drove to LA and stayed with him while I was there. He offered me to stay the rest of the week. So I said that would be a really big help. But he let me know that he had a group of people coming, that were having a party on the 30th, coming to stay, and that I would have to leave. So I said okay, and I stayed for the week, and then I left when my time was up. So I've been door dashing every day since leaving, and it's just not that lucrative. So in order to cut my expenses, I am living in my car because a hotel and Airbnb is very expensive on the nights or the days that I have job interviews, because luckily I've been able to land about 6 interviews and I have 2 scheduled for next week. On those days, I get a hotel so that I can get proper sleep and be able to do my hair and my makeup. Ever since my boyfriend was murdered, I have been trying really hard to get back on my feet, but it's been very challenging and very hard, and even though I'm doing my best, it just doesn't seem like it's good enough. Every day I'm trying, some days harder than others, but I'm just hoping on a prayer that eventually my life will turn around for the better. My trauma changed me, and it is true when they say that you don't have any idea what somebody has gone through. If you've made it this far and you watched part 1 and part 2, I really appreciate it. And please just remember to be kind to other people.
Yeah, I hope she figures everything out. It definitely seems like that trauma definitely has had an impact on her and her well being and everything. So I hope that she figures everything out. Uh, it sounds like she's been hopping from place to place, but when you don't have much opportunity, that's pretty much all you can do. Hopefully, she's able to get stable at one point and get her life together. Thank you for watching this with me. I can't say that this is foolishness again because it's a pretty serious topic, pretty serious conversation. But like, comment, and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.